Donald Trump is temperamentally and morally unfit to be the president of the United States. So says the editorial board of the New York Times in yet another stinging rebuke of Donald Trump. The New York Times, having endorsed Kamala Harris as early as September, now has taken the extraordinary step in a just 150-word new post to the editorial page to remind people to vote and to vote against Donald Trump and vote for democracy is now, as the paper of record in America, clearly on this side of the angels and on this side of the arc of history, just as they were in 1860 when they rousingly endorsed Abraham Lincoln. You're on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. We don't let democracy die in the darkness. Help us build this pro-democracy channel to the other side of Tuesday by taking a moment and hitting the blue subscribe button. It's all free to help us build this network. And I'm Michael Popok, and I'm at the intersection. It is important. As much as social media has taken hold in America, mainstream media still controls the hearts and minds of millions of Americans. I know a lot of them are here on Legal AF and on the Midas Touch Network, but we wait patiently on election night using their polling operation and their polling chiefs for major networks to declare who is going to be the president of the United States. And we always look to major newspapers, the LA Times, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, the New York Times, to help guide us, because they are the closest to it in evaluating the facts on the ground at rallies, talking to voters and the like, and analyzing and doing investigative reporting as part of their execution of the First Amendment and freedom of the press. Those that are controlled by billionaire corporations have lost their brass, their gravitas, their balls to make an endorsement. That's what we saw with the LA Times and its newsroom being roiled by the veto of a billionaire owner about endorsing Kamala Harris when the endorsement had already been written. Same thing for the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, who says when he took over the paper in 2017, he put on the masthead, "Democracy dies in the darkness." It died at the Washington Post, right? What used to be an amazing institution owned by the Graham family, responsible for all the president's men and the takedown of the last criminal presidency in Richard Nixon, gone because Jeff Bezos doesn't want to tangle with Donald Trump in the future or MAGA in the future. But the New York Times, once again, as it always does, my hometown paper, owned by the Schulzberger family, for over 150 years, stood up again and said the only choice to preserve our constitutional democracy, our republic, is Kamala Harris. Here's what they wrote. It is pithy. It is efficient. It is about 150 words. It is by the editorial board, and it ran in today's paper. Let me read it to you in its entirety, because it's that important. You already know Donald Trump. He is unfit to lead. Watch him. Listen to those who know him best. He tried to subvert an election and remains a threat to democracy. He helped overturn Roe with terrible consequences. Mr. Trump's corruption and lawlessness go beyond elections. It's his whole ethos. He lies without limit. If he's reelected, the GOP won't restrain him. Mr. Trump will use the government to go after opponents. He will pursue a cruel policy of mass deportations. He will wreak havoc on the poor, the middle class, and employers. Another Trump term will damage the climate, shatter alliances, and strengthen autocrats. Americans should demand better. Period. Vote. Period. I mean, there's no stronger message. I mean, we could have written that a million different ways. They had a lot of hyperlinks in there for the current generation that likes to hyperlink over and see the prior reporting by the editorial board being pulled together with this 150-page article, which they're nailing to the American soul for people to read and understand. And it's important. As much as we may criticize corporate media, mainstream media, especially as an independent media channel that doesn't tell me or anyone else what to say without censorship, without worrying about the publisher reaching over or the owner of the publisher reaching over and quashing a story. Well, we don't have to worry about people walking out of our newsroom, walking away from our podcast microphones, because that'll never happen here. I think that's why people come here. But the New York Times is still important. What they say is important. The Pulitzer Prizes that they win for true investigative journalism, their partnerships with ProPublica, another investigative arm, is important. People talk around the water cooler and around the bar and the kitchen counter and the kitchen table because of what they've read in places like the New York Times. It is our counterbalance and our counterweight to the trolling and the fire hose of misinformation and disinformation and AI-generated falsehoods that are out there being led by Russian trolls who are feeding a willing population of MAGA, who are being willingly brainwashed. They're asked to be brainwashed. So we have to talk about papers like the New York Times. They are going to have the balls, as is Midas Touch, as soon as we get the information, to declare victory, state by state, without fear or favor. Democracy dies in the darkness. Someone should remind Jeff Bezos of his ethos that was supposed to be on the cover. There's a reason the New York Times has as its ethos all the news that's fit to print. They make editorial decisions. They have to. They decide what goes in, outside the paper, what goes above the fold on the front page, what goes below the fold, how big of a font size to demonstrate how important of a story. Trump indicted, Trump convicted, Obama wins, right? Biden wins. Let's see what the masthead and the top above the fold headline, electronic or otherwise, is going to say on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or within a week, depending upon how the certification of the election goes. But the editorial board is important, right? They could have written 1,000 words, 10,000 words, 100,000 words. They obviously wanted to keep it short for an attention deprived, an attention challenged set of demographics that also read their paper for the TikTok generation. They wanted to keep it TikTok-y. I get it. That's not my audience. You know, sometimes I get criticized in comments like, Popok, we got your point. You could have done it in a minute and a half. Sure. And there are social media platforms where that's important. And we take and make my videos into short form videos for people to consume that way. But that's not our audience. Our audience is here for it. They are here for democracy, to protect democracy. And you have the greatest weapon at your disposal. Well, two, your exercise of your First Amendment rights to say how you feel, to associate with whom you choose, as long as it's not criminal, and to vote for whom you want to see in office. It's not just about who you want to see. It's you voting for the image of your America. What do you want in your America? When you wake up on Wednesday morning, or you stay up late Tuesday night or Thursday, however long it takes to certify and count, what is the America that we've woken up to? Right? What is it? Is it one that believes in dignity of the human value and dignity of being an American? What does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to help those who yearn to be Americans? Right? Who aren't stealing your job? Whatever your job is, or if you're retired, great for you, but whatever your job was, it's not being stolen by some Haitian poor person that's coming over here for a better life. Dirty jobs, maybe. Okay? And so if you are an immigrant, if you are somebody who came from immigrants, who came to this country for a better life, you have to help reach down and help people up, not punch down, which is what Donald Trump has been doing with his minions. Close the door, close the border. How about dignified immigration policy? How about not separating families at deportation? How about not sending American citizen children or young adults back to countries they never were born in or raised in because they got to go back with their families because of an inhumane deportation system? What about the impact of that? If you don't care about that, what about the impact of our economy of 10 million people who are working for you in the dark, in the shadows, in kitchens, in fields, in factories, doing dirty jobs you don't want to do, nor do you want your children to do? Who's going to replace them? Who? Nobody. Not the Republican country club oligarchs who are supporting MAGA for their own purposes, for their own wallets, for their own bank accounts, for their own investments. No. What kind of country do we want to be? What is our highest ideals? What did the founding fathers and the framers want for a country? Right? What did we want? Why did we leave England? Why did we form this country? Why do we aspire to a more perfect union? To let Donald Trump try to avoid a jail sentence and reward him with the presidency of the United States? Isn't there a consolation prize? Can't we give him the home prison prize? let him have the presidential home game at home wearing an ankle bracelet. Isn't that better than rewarding him to avoid prosecution? It's the only, let me declare this one more time. It's the only reason Donald Trump is running, right? If he wasn't prosecuted, if he wasn't indicted, if he wasn't convicted, if he wasn't facing sentencing and conviction in multiple jurisdictions, he would not be running for president. This is an elaborate game an elaborate game in the backyard when you used to try to get to the tree to get to it before your friends during hide and seek, right? To get to the safety base, the safety tree. He's trying to get to the safety presidency. And we're going to allow him? Or there's a healthy group of Americans, large number, millions of people that are going to enable him to use the presidency in order to not only line his own pockets, but to sacrifice our American ideals on the altar of his greed and his fear of going to prison? That's okay? It's not okay. It's not okay. It's not the America I don't think fair-minded people want to wake up to on Wednesday morning. So I applaud the New York Times editorial board. I never thought I'd have to say, look at that they had the brass ones to endorse Kamala Harris. Okay? But when I see the LA Times and the Washington Post sort of look down at their shoelaces and in an embarrassing fashion, and we know that their editorial boards already had Kamala Harris endorsements ready to go, and it was quashed. There's supposed to be, in a legitimate news organization, a wall, a compliance wall between the editorial side and the business side. The publisher and the editor the publisher is not supposed to quash the editorial decisions. That's how you know whether the paper is legitimate or not. If the publisher, who's concerned about money and returns on investment, can kill stories, then there's no independence of the editorial board, and the entire First Amendment freedom of the press falls apart. It's phony. It's phony at the Washington Post. It's phony at the LA Times. Because they allowed the business side, the publisher, tell the editorial side what to do. Even in the New York Times, there is another wall that's up within the newsroom, between the editorial board and the newsroom and the news gathering function. They do not coordinate. They don't tell each other what to do. That's an appropriate paper. That's why it's won as many Pulitzer Prize and for investigative reporting and editorial reporting because of that. Publisher, and that's been owned privately by the Schulzberger family for 150 years. When Abraham Lincoln was endorsed, a Schulzberger owned that paper, or an Ochs, O-C-H-S, which was the predecessor family. That's why it's Ochs-Schulzberger. That family has been endorsed in the business of endorsing presidents since Abraham Lincoln. They have a gravitas because of that. And they said, we don't want the family to tell the editorial board what to do. We don't want the publisher to tell the editorial side what to do, or the newsroom editors what to do. And that's why I'm not here reporting about the New York Times being neutral, both sides of it, not taking a position. It's too important. The stakes are too important. It's existential as far as I'm concerned. Sure, we survived the first Trump presidency. But I don't want to lose the federal judiciary. I don't want to lose the United States Supreme Court for 2 more generations. It's just unthinkable. And I got to do everything I can with your help to get Kamala Harris elected. I posted on my Instagram, my private Instagram, with a picture of my 4-month-old daughter and my wife. And I said, this is the reason I work so hard and round the clock to help get Kamala Harris elected president. Because when my daughter looks me in the eye after going to school and reading the chapter about who was president the year she was born, When she says, what did you do to have Kamala Harris win and Donald Trump be defeated? I need to be able to look my daughter in the eye and say, I did everything I could think of to avoid Donald Trump becoming president again. And everybody that follows me here on Legal AF and on the Midas Touch Network, you need to be able to look your family, your future generations in the eye and tell them that same thing. And if you do that and we do it together collectively, we're going to have great success on Tuesday. I'm Michael Popok. You're on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. Speaking of early voting and without election interference, hit the free subscribe button. Help this channel grow and build to be durable and lasting on the other side of Tuesday. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF contribution here or on the Midas Touch Network, I'm Michael Popok, and I am reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.